Hey, and welcome to the premiere episode of This Week in HazMat. So premiere episode, it means the very first one. So we're going to try to bring this to you every week. And what it's designed to do is look at recent case studies, best practices, lessons learned in the HazMat world. And so that we can stay up on, number one, stay up on current events, but also things that are happening around us, learning from our partners in the business. What we're not here to do is critique other responders. That's not our platform at all. We want to share information. We want to look at again, those lessons learned to see how we can become better ops level responders. Also want to mention our Facebook group. You guessed it, it's called HazMat Ops Training. So you can find us on Facebook. It is a closed group, so you'll have to request permission to enter the group, but we're going to be letting pretty much any responder in. So look us up and join that group. We'll post all of our information that we talk about on these episodes, This Week in HazMat episodes. We'll post on that group, and then we'll do the episode at the end of the week so that we can have a more broad discussion than what we put on Facebook. Also, the links to these stories that we talk about here in the episode, I'll have in the description. Always remember to use the information that you get here, whether it's This Week in HazMat episodes or our training content. Always make sure that you use that in conjunction with your policies. We don't want to change your policies. We want to make sure that you're following your agency's policies. If you see something here that makes you think about your policies and maybe that they need to be revised or they need to be changed, or maybe they're right on target, that's a great thing. We want to generate that discussion. We want to make you think, help you think, and get you to where you need to be in the response business. If you have something to add that's value added for other responders, be sure to put it down in the comments. Make sure that you subscribe either on that corner of the screen or that corner of the screen. There's a little subscribe icon, or you can scroll down just below the screen and there's a big red button to subscribe to make sure that you get all the updated content that we post. Our first case study for this week is coming from Greeley, Colorado. The North Colorado Medical Center emergency department had to close for about 45 minutes due to several folks, and the article doesn't go into great detail, but we're thinking 3, 4, 5, somewhere along in there, just a handful of folks who were chemically exposed to something. Again, the article doesn't go into great detail, so it could have been an industrial accident. It could have been a meth lab exploded. Don't know. So the point here is that those folks kind of self-referred to that ED. They were contaminated. ED shuts down, right? That's pretty common in the healthcare industry, especially for emergency departments in hospitals. They have to protect that hospital. The ED oftentimes is the main entrance. It's the most used entrance, especially for critical patients. People who need help, they're coming right there. So that's kind of the conduit into the hospital, but they have to protect those other patients who are already there. They have to protect potentially acute patients that are already in the ED, so they shut it down to protect all the infrastructure that's there. Luckily, it was a pretty low-key event. They were able to open back up in pretty short order. But here's the lesson learned, and here's the thing that I think about this, and I'll say this first. There's not a lot we can do about folks who just show up at an ED. Yes, the emergency department staff called the fire department, and they ended up with a local HazMat team there, but ops level responders are going to get there first, of course. So there are plenty of options that we have for decon, removing contaminated clothing, quick decon. We can do that as ops level responders. But again, it's a good reminder for us that if we are at a scene, and again, these people just showed up at the hospital, But if we're at a scene, we would never want to transport or even try to urge our partners in the EMS side to transport a contaminated patient. 90% of the contaminant can be removed by just removing contaminated clothing. So we always want to do that first, quick rinse, and before transport. Again, it doesn't really fit with this story, but it is a good reminder. The next story is kind of close to the fire service. This actually happened in a fire station in Boston. They were charging some batteries, pretty innocent deal. I think that the article doesn't go into great detail. But it talks about they were charging some batteries on a piece of reserve apparatus. Apparently the battery may have been not in the best of shape, and it kind of boiled the material, sulfuric acid and things that were in the battery, and it created a lot of gas. These can create hydrogen cyanide, hydrogen sulfide, pure hydrogen, liberates oxygen. There's a lot of things that these batteries will produce. A lot of them have plastic casings. As they generate heat, that plastic can give off a lot of different things. There's odors that come off of these, specifically rotten eggs from all the sulfur products. But also you can kind of get a bitter, sweet smell off of it as well. The ones that we've seen with the agencies that I've been a part of over the years, a lot of our patients that get exposed to these, not only the acid gases and the other things, but a lot of times they'll talk about a kind of a sweet, real pungent, but a little bit sweet smell along with those rotten egg smells as well. So these can be pretty tough to find as ops level responders because we don't have instrumentation most of the time. If we do, oftentimes it's just a carbon monoxide monitor. You may have a 4-gas instrument on your apparatus as an ops level responder. That's a slippery slope. Be careful if you do that. A 4-gas meter will pick up the hydrogen sulfide in that off-gassing process. But again, as ops level responders, we got to be careful there. We got to have strict policies with our agencies to be able to do air monitoring as ops level responders. I've got another video about that. We're going to do more information about that on the channel here. But again, just something that we really want to keep in mind. If we don't have instrumentation, and again, oftentimes our ops level responders are not going to have instrumentation. This can be a very hard incident to find the source. A lot of times what you see, and some of the ones that stick out in my mind over the years, cell phone tower sites that have large battery banks as battery backup. You see a lot of problems with battery operated forklifts and industrial equipment, that kind of thing. Big charging stations, you can see issues with those. And not only lead acid batteries, but other types of batteries will give off very similar types of byproducts. Most of the time these batteries will build pressure. Do your own research on this. Find out what you've got in your response area, what types of situations like this you have, and make sure that you understand what you might be getting into. Oftentimes the symptoms, sick building is very common. So we want to make sure that we understand that we're going to be looking at, and oftentimes we're going to find patients who are just kind of flu-like symptoms, headaches, that kind of thing. Again, these can be pretty tough to find if you're in a large building. Another one that sticks out in my mind, a heavy equipment operator, bulldozer operator, where he was actually sitting on top of the battery. The seat was mounted in such a way that the battery was under the seat. The charging system on the bulldozer was overcharging the battery. It was boiling the liquid inside the battery, and he's literally sitting on top of it, so it made him sick. And he was the most recent one that I remember that talked about a little bit of a sweet smell. So again, that may help you to diagnose and to find some of the sources. Our last story comes from Chandler, Arizona. This was this past Thursday. It's a printing company in a strip mall. It was a gas explosion. So The news article talks a little bit more in depth about this one. The fire department, upon arrival, was able to quickly identify an underground gas leak. There were 4 people who suffered burns. They all survived, and they're all expected to recover. What I want to talk about on this one, we're seeing all over the country, we're seeing underground boring. A lot of companies, a lot of telecom companies are putting in fiber. So we're seeing a lot of underground boring, not just for fiber, for other things too. But these are causing a lot of problems. Just right here locally, I'm in North Carolina, and right here in central North Carolina, we had one of our fairly large cities had an underground boring situation. The fire department went out, ops level responders, they found the leak. They were able to do some evacuations. The trouble was the LEL, as we're responding, the LEL, the mixture is getting bigger and bigger and bigger if the gas is confined. That's the big thing here. If the gas is confined, it doesn't matter if it's natural gas or propane, confined gas is a problem. And we want to make sure, again, as ops level responders, a lot of times we don't have instrumentation. So we're relying on our nose, and that's a bad thing. So we want to take the reports that the people are giving us. We want to take those things into consideration. If we don't do anything else, we need to evacuate the areas, give that life safety piece the best chance that it's got, do that evacuation. Again, get other partners involved who do have instrumentation, who can help us find the source. In this case, they were able to do that pretty quickly. Again, they arrived post-explosion. The one just down the road here, the explosion actually happened about 5 or so minutes, less than 10 minutes certainly, after the fire department arrived. They were on scene. They had one personnel that suffered some injuries. He recovered, but there was a store owner who they were not able to get to in time and hadn't located him at the time of the explosion. They didn't know he was in there. They were still doing evacuation, still in the process of evacuation when the explosion happened. So, and he did lose his life. So again, confined gas, problem, big problem. So we want to make sure that we are treating that as carefully as possible. Again, if you are doing air monitoring as ops level responders, make sure you've got a solid program. Solid training program, solid response program, solid maintenance program. Again, it's doable as an ops level responder. Make sure your policies are solid. So hey, that's all for our inaugural premiere episode of This Week in HazMat. Thank you for being with us. Again, make sure that you like and subscribe this video. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you join our Facebook group. Again, it's called HazMat Training also. It is a closed group, so make sure you do the request for membership. We'll let you right in as a responder for sure. And again, always make sure that anything that you take away from here is in conjunction and is consistent with your policies for your agency. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you next time.